You are witnessing Donald Trump lose a trade war that he himself launched. Right now, at this very moment, the most powerful man on the planet has just been completely outplayed by a country one-tenth his size. And the consequences are going to hit your wallet harder than any tariff ever could. Let me show you what is really going on. While the mainstream media fixates on Trump's latest Truth Social rants threatening Canada with 100% tariffs, 50% aircraft duties, and his strange claim that he's going to decertify every plane built north of the border, they are totally missing the real story. The real story isn't what Trump is threatening. It's what Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney just pulled off in front of the entire world, and Trump can't do a single thing about it. Here's what you need to know. On January 20th, 2026, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney stood on a stage in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum and delivered a speech that Trump is still furious about 2 weeks later. Carney looked at an audience of global leaders and said something that should have been obvious to everyone, but apparently wasn't. Middle powers must act together because if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. Trump was at the same forum. He heard those words, and within 72 hours, he had disinvited Canada from his so-called Board of Peace, threatened 100% tariffs on all Canadian goods, and started calling Carney governor instead of prime minister. A deliberate insult implying Canada should be America's 51st state. But here's where it gets interesting. Carney didn't back down. He didn't apologize. He didn't even hesitate. Instead, he called Trump's bluff right to his face. When Trump claimed Canada lives because of the United States, Carney immediately fired back, Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian. Then he went on television and said something that should scare anyone paying attention to Trump's negotiating style. He called Trump's 100% tariff threat bluster and said he meant every word he said in Davos. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent tried to save face by telling Fox News that Carney had privately walked back his Davos remarks in a phone call with Trump. Carney then held a press conference the very next morning and said on camera, "To be absolutely clear, and I said this to the president, I meant what I said in Davos." Trump had just been publicly called a liar by a foreign leader, with proof. Now, some of you are probably thinking, okay, but Canada is small. Trump can crush them with tariffs. This is just political theater. And that is exactly what Trump wants you to believe. But let's look at the actual numbers, because this is where Trump's entire strategy falls apart. The United States and Canada trade $1 billion worth of goods and services every single year. That's not a mistake. That's $1. $9 billion crossing the border every single day. Canada is the top destination for U.S. exports, buying $349 billion worth of American products in 2024. 34 U.S. states sell more goods to Canada than to any other foreign country. Not China, not Mexico, Canada. Canada supplies 63% of all crude oil imported into the United States. That's 148 billion barrels per year. If Trump actually imposed 100% tariffs on Canadian energy, gas prices in America would spike within weeks, not months, weeks. The entire U.S. auto supply chain, which depends on Canadian steel, aluminum, and auto parts worth over $100 billion a year, would grind to a complete stop. So when Trump threatens 100% tariffs, he's not threatening Canada. He's threatening American consumers, American manufacturers, and American workers. And Carney knows it. That's why he's not backing down. But the tariff threats are just the surface. Let me show you what's really happening underneath all this noise. On January 16th, 2026, Carney traveled to Beijing and did something that Trump explicitly warned him not to do. He made a deal with China. Under this agreement, Canada agreed to allow 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles into the Canadian market each year at a reduced tariff rate of 1%, down from the 100% tariff Canada had imposed in 2024. In exchange, China dropped retaliatory tariffs on Canadian canola, lowering rates to 15% by March 1, 2026, and removed anti-dumping tariffs on Canadian canola meal, lobster, crab, and peas. Now here's where Trump made his first huge miscalculation. When the deal was announced, Trump initially praised it. He told reporters at the White House that's what he should be doing. It's a good thing for him to sign a trade deal. If you can get a deal with China, you should do that. 5 days later, Trump completely reversed course and threatened 100% tariffs if Canada made a deal with China, which Canada had already done with Trump's original approval. What changed? Carney's Davos speech. That's what changed. Trump realized that Carney wasn't just making a trade deal. He was building a coalition of middle powers to counterbalance American dominance, and Trump panicked. The China deal opens more than $7 billion in export markets for Canadian farmers, ranchers, and fishermen. It's a massive win for Canada's agriculture sector, which had been hit hard by Chinese retaliatory tariffs imposed after Canada followed U.S. trade policy in 2024. But more importantly, it signals to the rest of the world that Canada is willing to break away from U.S. economic policy when it serves Canadian interests. And it's working. Since January, Carney has announced trade talks with India, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, and the South American Trade Bloc, Mercosur. He's bragged to Trump about striking 12 new deals across 4 continents in 6 months. These aren't hypothetical future agreements. These are active negotiations happening right now. Trump's response: more threats, more bluster, more Truth Social posts calling Carney governor and claiming China is taking over Canada. But here's the problem. Trump has already used his biggest weapon. He's already threatened 100% tariffs, and Carney called his bluff. Let me explain why Trump can't actually follow through. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, which Trump himself negotiated and signed during his first term, explicitly protects most Canadian goods from tariffs. As of August 2025, over 85% of U.S.-Canada trade remains tariff-free under USMCA exemptions.